Lazerboy, what is the secret of your powers?
Hello and welcome to the Lazerboy podcast, episode 24. In this episode, I'm going to be going over my top 10 films of 2000. So, I missed the 20th year anniversary of 2000 last year when I wasn't very much in the mood to review films or to go back. Actually, it was quite the opposite. It was a better time for me to go back and watch movies from the past, but because of the pandemic and everything, I just slipped my mind. Maybe had my mind on more important matters, like my health and my life, that sort of thing. But just finally came around to it, so I decided to just go over a top 10 list. It's just going to be me talking today. But before that, let me go ahead and plug the Lazerboy podcast. You can find more episodes at thelazerboy.wordpress.com, and you can find us on YouTube and Instagram. Just type in the Lazerboy with a Z. All right, so it is mid 2021, late April of 2021, and the Oscars just flew by us. Had a weird ceremony there where it was very limited. It wasn't in the Dolby Theater. I think it was, I believe, at the Union Station, also in Los Angeles. So, it was. They advertised it not as it's not your father's or your grandfather's Academy Awards. So they were just trying to shake it up a bit. I don't want to talk about it too much because I didn't really watch all of the nominated movies. Was rooting for Judas and the Black Messiah, which I still haven't seen, but heard great things about it. I love Daniel Kaluuya. I love Lakeith Stanfield, and was rooting for Minari, for Steven Yeun. Loved him ever since Walking Dead, obviously, and all of his turns on Conan. Loved him on Burning, I believe it was called. Burning. It's not Burning Palms, right? Burning. I think it was just called Burning. And I thought it was a very subtle transformation for him. He had to relearn Korean since he's been speaking English most of his adult life as an actor in the States. So I don't know if he's Korean born, but maybe he was born in Korea and then came over to the States and then forgot all. I'm pretty sure he didn't forget the entire language, but he definitely had to relearn it to be a native speaking Korean character. And I thought it was a very subtly powerful performance because it's a very of the 80s. He's very soft spoken, yet he had to command a presence, like a patriarchal, head of the household, silent kind of a silent strength, right? That you see a lot of older Asian Americans, Asians, I should say, elders, kind of stoic, right? Very proud, very honorable, and he portrayed that very well. He probably drew from his parents or his grandparents as well, experiences from growing up with Korean parents, Korean immigrants as well. So thought it was a very strong performance. The grandma ended up taking the best supporting actress, Yoon Yoo Jung. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. Other featured highlights. Another Round, which all these movies have been just sitting on my thumb drive. I've been meaning to watch, but Another Round, directed by Thomas Vinterberg, and starring Mads Mikkelsen, our favorite here at the show. I love Mads from Hannibal, obviously, and all of the Pusher trilogy. I don't think he's in every Pusher movie, but Danish actor came up with Nicholas Winding Refn. So very proud of that film, even though I haven't seen it. The big, I saw Soul, which got best original score, best animated. That's always going to be a shoe in. Pixar's going to get that award like every year. It seems like so. No surprises there. Daniel Kaluuya won Best Supporting Actor. I still need to see that film. And then the big awards, Best Director went to Chloe Zhao for Nomadland, the first Asian American director to ever be nominated and won. So, very happy for her. Nomadland also won Best Picture. I still haven't seen it. Just nothing about. I don't even know what it's about. I guess it's about people who are nomads, about a specific subculture. But for me, as great as Frances McDormand is as an actor, just the poster and the trailer did nothing for me. You just saw her face, and I'm like, I don't want to see her face for for 2 hours. She's not that easy on the eyes, so I know it sounds very completely superficial and generic. But I have been watching a lot of K-pop this past year, so I guess that has something to do with that. Because the idols are just so gobsmackingly beautiful and eye-popping, so gorgeous, each and every one of them. Anyway, so so Oscars, I wasn't really rooting for a lot, so I wasn't really invested this year. The closing of the ceremony was really odd. Instead of closing with the Best Picture as per every award ceremony since the last 20 years that I can remember, they ended it with the Best Actress and Best Actor. So Frances McDormand won Best Actress, and she gave a really short speech. I guess it was short and simple. She didn't want to pontificate and ramble on. I guess it was okay. Didn't really know I don't remember what it was, so I guess it wasn't that memorable. And then the final award went to Best Actor, which was Anthony Hopkins, who wasn't present at the ceremony. So they they awarded it on his behalf. So there's no speech to close out the ceremony. So that was really strange. I don't know, if I guess it was just to kind of show, oh, we don't really know the winners, and but I'm pretty sure they do, and it's all planned, staged ahead of time. So knowing that, why close out with somebody who wasn't there? I thought it was for sure gonna go posthumously to Chadwick Boseman, which it didn't. I haven't seen Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. But give it to Stephen Yeun, man. He was hanging out there for 2.5 hours, 3 hours, however long the ceremony is. Give it to that guy. That guy deserved it. Or Riz Ahmed, Gary Oldman too. Gary Oldman was also present. So anyway, that's all I really had to say about the Academy Awards, the 93rd Annual Academy Awards, Oscars 2021. I wanted to talk a little bit about Bret Easton Ellis, because I've been listening to his podcast, and gave me the inspiration to just talk alone, monologue, and pontificate. Although I'm not as articulate or intelligent or as famous as he is, not famous at all actually. So, but I do fancy myself a writer. I am working on a screenplay with my friend who will remain unnamed, but needless to say, he knows some big names, works with a big name, and for sure our screenplay will go into production. I don't want to say for sure, I'll knock on wood, but highly likely that the screenplay will go into production. I'm working on a pilot script right now. That's very kind of Gen Z version of Entourage about YouTubers. So, and I'm working with my old professor on that to develop it and to fine tune it to get it pitch ready. So, I do fancy myself a writer, and I love his his musings on culture, on cinema, on just the state of the world right now. Even though he stopped podcasting in like 2017, all of his words remain just so relevant on. I don't want to get into everything, but I really identify with how he labels our culture today as kind of victimization. He sees Gen Zers and our current political climate, the current ruling state. Is that what you call it? The liberals, basically. He sees the liberals as kind of being too censored. They censor everything. Everything has to be kind of combed over, and we can't really express anything anymore. We have to think twice, think thrice, and double check everything. We can't really say what we're feeling anymore. And I to a degree, I agree with that. It's difficult. It's good that we don't have all the horrible people running around anymore. Harvey Weinstein's and Bill Cosby's, who were allowed to do what they do unfettered, unchecked. But it came at a cost. It came at a cost at our freedom. And I do agree with them that we are over victimizing ourselves. You know, Back in the day, I guess it's just a generational thing, but back in the day, if we got bullied, and back then it was physical bullying, today it's cyberbullying, right? But whenever we had to deal with a trauma, that's what we did. We dealt with it instead of trying to tiptoe around it and try to prevent it as best as possible. If we do that, we're never going to experience anything. It's just, I can't articulate it very well, but it's just it's an oxymoron. It's a very contradictory. So that's the state we're living in, though. And but I also wanted to address what he said about the cinema, which is and again, I'm butchering what he said. He said it very much more eloquently, but he said pretty much that movies back in the day, you know, you had a set time to go to movie theaters. You had a show to make, and back then, without there wasn't a show after a show after a show. It's all very spaced out. So if you had to make a show, you had to make that time, and then when you make that time, you sit down. The large screen is larger than life. You let the film, even if the film was not that great, you let the film take a hold of you, and it was larger than you. It was larger than life on this giant screen, and it took a hold of you for hour and a half, 2 hours, 2 hours and a half, 2.5 hours, whatever, and it controlled you. It dictated. You planned your whole day around that movie. Maybe you planned your whole week around it if you had to make a trip to go see it. If you didn't have that movie playing in your city, and then you revered that movie. You paid respect enough to just let it wash over you. And then today it's completely different, right? We have so many options, oversaturation. Whether you're watching a movie on Blu-ray, on physical media, which is dying, or you download it on iTunes or Amazon or Netflix. You're streaming it on Netflix or Hulu, whatever. You control the movie, right? You can press play, pause whenever you want to go to the bathroom, make a sandwich, go get some popcorn. If the movie's boring, you check your phone, check your social media. So you control the film, and you don't have that same respect over it anymore. And he was just speaking on that, and it really spoke to me, and I wanted to address that. And even though it's not safe to go to the theaters right now, it's getting safe. With protocols and vaccinations, widespread vaccinations. Hopefully, we're gonna get to that again. But even so, like, the culture's changed so much. Ditto, cell phones, smartphones completely ruined our attention span, our collective attention span. You know, like I was talking about, watching a movie and without checking your phone, that's damn near impossible for me to do nowadays. Even, I'm binging a show in the middle of an episode, I will not find it in myself to have the patience to sit through the entire. It depends really, but usually I'm checking my phone once or twice at the very least. So there's that. So anyway, I just wanted to point that out, and I'm doing what Bret Easton Ellis is doing now. I'm just talking to myself. So let's get right into um, my best films of 2000.
New card. What do you think?
Whoa, very nice.
Patrick, you're so sweet.
Jean,
Yes, Patrick?
would you like to accompany me to dinner?
Sabrina, why don't you dance a little? Christy, get down on your knees. We're not through yet.
That's a wonderful suit. It looks so soft.
I don't think I can control myself. If you stay, something bad will happen.
The year 2000, very much, a direct continuation of 1999. Not as many groundbreaking films, and it wasn't as nostalgic to me because 1999 was like the first year that I went to the movies like religiously, and that I got movies like adult movies, and I was just like, I had a great ritual with my friends or with a close group of friends to just get high and watch a movie. And if you do that, you revere the movie even more because you have no choice. But, something about smoking weed or getting high and watching a movie gives you like hyper focus, right? Or it could do the opposite. You can just like, if you have too much on your mind, you're probably just thinking about that the whole time. And then you're, next thing you know, like half or 2/3 of the movie's gone and you didn't really understand what was going on. But you let the vibe wash over you, let the mood wash over you. And, bottom line, it's much more entertaining, right? A movie like Pulp Fiction or Requiem for a Dream, movies that, apply directly to the drug-addled mind. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. But even, like classic films like, I don't know, Lawrence of Arabia or Star Wars, those films, especially nowadays, they're paced like, older films. So it's harder to get into for whatever reason, editing and, like I said, pacing issues. Not that they have issues, but it was just a little bit more slow back in the day, because we're a lot more fast paced now, especially our films. We have like not only 3-act structures, we have like 5-act structures, right? Like TV shows where you need like plot twist after plot twist or plot point after plot point, and the story just moves along at like a rapid fire pace. So anyway, I had that going on for me, so I think that's why I also revere these movies a lot more. They're much more larger than life to me. They're just like almost like something of a dream, It's like a dream, that one of those rare dreams that you remember, that you half remember, and just like are burned into your memory, into your brain. That's what these films are to me, in a sense. So let me go through these from 10 to 1. But yeah, the year was strange. It was the action films were we're still in a state of, Jet Li, Jackie Chan, from Rush Hour to, Jet Li was a huge thing because of Lethal Weapon 4, right? And then a producer somehow said, hey, let's pair him with, DMX and Aaliyah for Romeo Must Die. And I guess they liked that formula so much, so they made Exit Wounds, the much lesser Exit Wounds, and Cradle to the Grave, which is a terrible film. Rest in peace, DMX, though. But terrible idea. They just thought, that that odd couple pairing, right? Of, you know, Chris Tucker, Jackie Chan would work well for them, but no, Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker had charisma. They had chemistry. They're funny. They had a presence. Like Jet Li has no presence beyond being stoic, and that's not entertaining in and of itself. He's a good like side character, like in Lethal Weapon 4, but when you have a film revolve around him and the uncharismatic DMX, sorry to, speak ill of the dead, he's not a great actor though. A lot of people would agree with me on that. So you had those. You had Shanghai Noon, which was a 2000 film. Again, they try to pair Jackie Chan with another odd couple with him and Owen Wilson. I don't think I've ever seen that, but other action films were Gone in 60 Seconds, The Patriot, The Perfect Storm, The Sixth Day, Reindeer Games, which is a great. It was John Frankenheimer with Ben Affleck. Then you had some comedies: Road Trip, Loser, Little Nicky, Screwed, which I really wanted to see because it had my favorite writing duo. I'm pulling it up right here. Sorry about that. Larry Karashevsky and Scott Alexander, who are prominent for doing like the biopics like Man on the Moon and The People versus Larry Flint. Let me just go through my miscellaneous films. Most disappointing film at the time to me was Unbreakable, just because I was expecting another Sixth Sense, and wasn't expecting this slow burn character drama / comic book film, which at the time comic book films weren't a huge thing yet, but I'll get into that later. Some guilty pleasures: Me, Myself, and Irene. Love the Farrelly brothers ever since Dumb and Dumber, and then they became more prominent with There's Something About Mary and Kingpin, and I believe it was their second collaboration with Jim Carrey. Another guilty pleasure: Love and Basketball. I forget who's in it. Some Omar Epps was in it, I believe. Could be wrong. I don't want to look it up. Romeo Must Die was a guilty pleasure just because it was so novel at the time to see a rapper actor with doing a martial arts movie with Jet Li, and I got a soft spot for Aaliyah. She is just beautiful, and of course the requisite hip hop soundtrack, which was like in every urban black film known to man in the 90s to the early 2000s, maybe even today. Not as prominent as it was back then, but I remember just I'm a DJ, so just buying all the soundtracks to all those films. So most overrated film to me, and some of these movies are also on my top 10 list, but most overrated film to me at the time was Gladiator, just because I thought, what's the big deal? This big operatic period piece, sword and sandal, sword epic. I said sword twice, sorry. Sword and sandal epic with Russell Crowe, directed by, period piece extraordinaire Ridley Scott. Most groundbreaking film to me, I have two of them. X-Men, just because, it made the comic book superhero movie film commercially viable, which I think Spider-Man in 2002 took it to the next level when it, shattered box office records. Low-key, I think Blade kind of kicked it off. It was kind of the litmus test, saying, hey, it can be done, and it can be. It's not that campy. It can be taken seriously, and it can kick ass, right? Film I didn't get at the time: American Psycho, which is on my list as well. Shadow of the Vampire and Boiler Room, just because they were too adult, and I actually didn't see Shadow of the Vampire at the time, but I'd imagine it would fly over my head as well. Boiler Room, just because they're talking about stock trading and all that finance mumbo jumbo that I didn't really understand, and I had no interest in back when I was 18 at the time. So all right, let's get into my number 10 film, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon by Ang Lee. Great wuxia epic, starring Michelle Yeoh and Chow Yun-fat and Zhang Ziyi. gorgeous Zhang Ziyi back then, and Chang Chen, who is a huge Wong Kar Wai guy. Yeah, nothing much to say. I watched this film with my mom. She's a huge wuxia fan, and we both loved it. I loved seeing her reaction to it, and I loved watching the film and kind of being nostalgic of all the wuxia serials that she and I watched when I was a child. So, as Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and there was a time where the wuxia thing was a huge cultural artifact in American cinema, and then I believe Zhang Yimou took advantage of that with his little wuxia trilogy, Hero, House of Flying Daggers, and Curse of the Golden Flower. Great films, all three of those. But moving on, my number 9 is Almost Famous. The roadie musical kind of epic that was very personal to him when he was a writer for Rolling Stone, about a young journalist roadie who tours with an upcoming 70s rock and roll band. It's not the 60s, right? Yeah, I believe it was the 70s. Could be wrong. Maybe it was late 60s. Great personal film. Probably his masterpiece. Cameron Crowe, I'm talking about, had a rising star with Jerry Maguire, and earlier than that, Say Anything, singles, and he was the writer of Fast Times at Ridgemont High. I believe that was his book that he adapted. So he's a prolific writer as a youngin. He was chronicled his very unique upbringing and perspective. So you can tell that Almost Famous was very personal to him, and it was personal to me at the time too, because I was really getting into rock and rediscovering old rock classics. So seeing it was just a great breath of fresh air for me. Being a hip hop head, I needed to diversify my musical tastes, so to speak, and great performances by Philip Seymour Hoffman. Gotta look it up now. I know Philip Seymour Hoffman was in it. Who else was in it? Kate Hudson, Billy Crudup, Patrick Fugit. Francis McDormand was in this. Zooey Deschanel, Jason Lee. Star-studded cast. Yeah, very personal film for me, as most of the films on my list are. But I had to have, a straightforward drama in there. So number 8 is Unbreakable. I didn't get it at the time, but it was my most disappointing film. But for me now, it is a classic, a very subtle classic. It's a very slow burn character piece, like I mentioned before. But it really dissects all these genre tropes of the comic book, right? And it goes almost like encyclopedic with the references and the structure, and even though there's no obvious set piece or kind of superhero dynamics, it's more of like a chess game of the mind, more of like a comedy of manners. If you're expecting like a straightforward comic book film, you're going to be disappointed. But if you're looking for something different, it's definitely something to watch. And I'm just ashamed that I didn't get it at the time. But hey, I was an 18-year-old kid who's expecting another Sixth Sense, as a lot of people were at the time. But like a lot of people, I have swiftly changed my perspective on my opinion of that film. All right, so number 7 is Gladiator, the Ridley Scott epic. A lot of people will say it's not as great as Kingdom of Heaven, which is his later kind of crusade epic, right? I say it's up there. Maybe even a good double feature if you want to waste 6 hours of your life. I say that facetiously, but no, it's fine. It's a fine film. Do I think it deserved Best Picture? Probably not. But Academy, or their standards back then anyway, were they're suckers for that. They love period pieces, and if you were accurate, and performances were great. Russell Crowe, Joaquin Phoenix, or all the actors that I can remember. I don't want to look it up, but good enough to make my top 10, at least the bottom of it. Number 6, Memento. At the time when I saw it, it was groundbreaking for me. That was another. I failed to mention the second film of my most groundbreaking film. I believe it was Memento. Memento. Just because Christopher Nolan and Jonathan Nolan, who wrote the original short film or short story to which Christopher Nolan adapted, kind of broke boundaries with structure, right? Jumping around time, which kind of Tarantino made cool again with Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction. And it was a relatively modest indie budget, starring Guy Pearce, Carrie-Anne Moss, and Joe... forgot his name. Joe something, right? Joe Pantoliano? Joey Pants, I like to call him. The structure is kind of really easy if you break it down. Like, the main timeline goes backwards, so it goes like, if you number each scene, like 1 to 15, instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, it goes 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, so on and so forth. And in between each of those scenes, there's scenes that intercut those that are in chronological order, right? So all the scenes that you see in between that are black and white, those are chronologically correct. Which, if you don't have somebody point that out to you, will be really confusing. But that's why I guess you see the visual contrast of those scenes interconnected together. Not interconnected, sorry, but I'm at a loss for words right now. It's late and I'm drinking. But that's the film that introduced Christopher Nolan to the world. Officially, right? He did Following before that, but that was like a very modest indie picture, which also played with time. All of his films really play with time. He's just... I was talking about this with Dat the other day, or how I think he just does it to he's like the ultimate British troll, because he just... Even a film like Dunkirk, where it's just a simple narrative, he needs to divide that and complicate that with time as well. So I'm a little over him, especially with Tenet. Tenet was just aggressively frustrating. So it flew over my head at the time. Maybe I said in my earlier review of that, or in an earlier podcast of last year, I just wasn't ready for it, right? I believe it was in my top 10 films of the year. I'm not ready for it. I'm still not ready for it. I'm kind of over Christopher Nolan. He's kind of pompous. But I might change my tune later, so I'll, take that with a grain of salt. All right, number 5, my top 5. In the Mood for Love is my number 5. It is... Even though I wasn't aware of Wong Kar-wai until much later, maybe 2004, after I saw Chungking Express. Then, I was just like hooked. I was like, I love that when like you just see a feature of somebody, and then, especially like a foreign film where, they're not bound by the structure and the cultural standards of, American films. And it just blows your mind, and you're just like, oh, I want to see more of this director. And then it just opens up this huge rabbit hole. And then, I went to rent Falling Angels, Ashes of Time, Days of Being Wild, Happy Together, and then eventually stumbled upon In the Mood for Love, which is, I believe, his masterpiece. Very romantic, droning, moody piece of cinema. Very classical romance that never happens. It's just a poem of unrequited love. Stunning visuals, stunning slow motion cinematography. Christopher Doyle was my hero back then. I loved his DP work. But yeah, for me. Oh, and by the way, the works of Wong Kar-wai collection is out on the Criterion Collection, so check that out. I believe it's on their 4K remaster. That's not in 4K, it's in 1080p. Criterion needs to jump on the 4K bandwagon, but they haven't done that yet, so that's my number 5, In the Mood for Love. My number 4 is Requiem for a Dream, a film that just is a gut punch. Completely blew my mind. I was watching it with a group of friends on a weekend where we just had a DJing scratch or mix session. We're getting high, maybe drinking a little, and I was just like, "Hey, I rented this this trippy movie. You guys want to watch it? Requiem for a Dream." Yeah. We got high and watched it. This is trippy as shit. This is fucking so cool, right? And then by the end of that movie, we're just staring at the end credits, just gobsmacked, just in complete shock. What the fuck we just watched? Just hit us so hard. And those kind of movies are rare. Movies that just really hit you and are just so visceral. No words. I have no words right now to explain how I felt. It was a mind fuck. There you go. That's a perfect verbal description of how I felt. Just takes you along this ride with these characters, and you go down this black hole of this descent of despair and doom and gloom. It wasn't all that though, right? It good times at the beginning, first and second acts, and then you just kind of spiral into this psychological descent, this madness with the Ellen Burstyn character and all of the characters pretty much. Hubert Selby Jr., who's really good at that. I believe I also watched Last Exit to Brooklyn, and it also kind of mind fucked me in that same fashion. So, the guy's a sadist. Anyway, speaking of sadism, American Psycho is my number 3.
I just had to kill a lot of people.
A movie I didn't get at the time. Was a fantastic satire of privilege, of just the mundanity of the overprivileged, but of American culture in general, right? Of consumerism, of materialism, of capitalism. And at the time I didn't get it. I didn't get the subtleties of the humor, because I didn't live enough life yet, right? I understood what satire was, from Network to most recently than that Bamboozled, which came out the year before, and even before that Natural Born Killers, which not subtle at all, just hammers you over the head that it's a satire, it's just cartoonish, right? Which strangely enough, I heard a piece of trivia that Oliver Stone was actually attached to the project with Edward R. Pressman production company, and he had Leonardo DiCaprio in mind for that, which would have been a completely different movie, don't you think? I mean, Leo was a bit too young for that, and he ended up doing The Beach instead with Danny Boyle, which I just recently rewatched, and it still holds up. I really like that film. It didn't make my list. Probably could have, bumped something for it, but because I think that film as well. I'm going off on a tangent here, but I think that film as well is a indictment of American society, of how we're just being too disconnected. Right, another theme of The Matrix as well is that we're not talking to each other anymore. We don't have a community. We don't, do things in real life, IRL anymore. It's all online, and such a great, ahead of its time statement and theme flew over audiences' heads probably in 2000, but watching that now, it's more prescient than ever. But back to American Psycho, truly a masterpiece. Again, I'm a huge fan of Bret Easton Ellis, and another thing that I didn't really get at the time was that the open-ended, ambiguous ending. Spoilers for American Psycho, but at the end, it's kind of insinuated that it was all in his head, right? Especially the last final sequence where it just ratchets up the surrealism, and you're just like, is this all happening? Or, I mean, obviously the last sequence is in his head, because you can't shoot, a cop car with a handgun and it blows up, or an ATM doesn't want to feed on cats, so on and so forth. But yeah, I did extensive research after that. I looked at all the frequently asked questions, because there was once a time where I loved open-ended endings in indie cinema, but for now, I needed answers, and I loved what Mary Herron, the director and screenwriter of the film, said about the ending. She was kind of actually disappointed by how people thought that it was a dream sequence, and how all the previous killings would be inconsequential as a consequence. I worded that kind of weird, but she thinks that in her mind and the screenwriter's mind, their intention was that yes, he actually did kill all those people in the beginning, right? All the killings previous to his kind of breakdown, his manic kind of psychological dream sequence breakdown was real. So there'd be no consequence as a result, right? I'm gonna read this quote. It kind of explains it better than I do, or I can. In line with what both Heron and Turner feel about the question of whether or not the murders are real, Bret Easton Ellis has pointed out that if none of the murders actually happened, the entire point of the novel would be rendered moot. The fact that Bateman is never caught, and that no one believes his confession, just reinforces the shallowness, self-absorption, and lack of morality that they all have. None of them care that he has just confessed to being a serial killer, because it just doesn't matter. They have more important things to worry about. In Bateman's superficial high-class society, the fact that even his open confession to multiple murders is ignored serves to reinforce the idea of a vacuous, self-obsessed, materialistic world where empathy has been replaced with apathy. So, long story short, they happen in the minds of the creators, right? And that's what satire is. At the end, he confesses, and the guy's just like, "No way, you can't do that." Like the guy that the Jared Leto character, I forgot his name. Like that lawyer met him up. So either Patrick Bateman imagined killing that character, or there's another character named that. I don't know, but yeah, the fact that it was left open-ended to me at the time just didn't sit with me well, and I was just like, nope, and I just kind of dismissed it, and never went back to it, even though it was a huge cultural, I don't know if phenomenon is the word, but it was highly referenced in a lot of pop culture. So Patrick Bateman's kind of plastic suit was, people went dressed as him for Halloween, and stuff like that. So American Psycho is my number 3 film. Great film. If you guys haven't seen it, another prescient film for today's society, right? Overprivileged white males, especially, they get away with murder, right? So, so to speak. Number 2 is High Fidelity. I don't want to say too much about this. You guys know, well, people who know me personally know that I'm a huge music collector, music aficionado, collect records. I'm a DJ, so the movie really hits personal to me. I mean, I made a whole podcast show about me and my friend Edwin. Edwin and I did a podcast for the show, and then we ended up doing a podcast, like a 2-hour podcast about the movie. So if you guys want to listen to that and hear my in-depth thoughts on High Fidelity, go to High Fidelity TV podcast. Just type that in. I don't think there's that many out there. High Fidelity TV podcast.wordpress.com. I think it's highfidelitytv.wordpress.com. But needless to say, a very personal movie to me. It's a great cultural staple of the end of the 90s and the 2000s. So, number 1 to me, hands down, Traffic.
This winter,
we're going after their top guys.
Your government surrendered this war a long time ago.
the director of Aaron Brockovich and Out of Sight
I have a job for you, but I don't have much time.
takes you beyond the slogans,
Where the hell are the trucks? Where are they?
behind the corruption,
Make us believe you got a boss.
No, it's a death sentence.
and into the depths of an underworld
You worry about getting me what I want. I worry about myself.
where no one
Don't do this vigilante thing.
gets away clean. Michael Douglas,
Just tell me where my daughter is.
Don Cheadle,
We got you making the deal on tape.
Benicio del Toro,
It's all about the money.
Dennis Quaid,
Stay out of things.
and Catherine Zeta-Jones.
Now get out of the car and shoot him in the head.
Traffic.
Steven Soderbergh was like one of my favorite filmmakers at the time. He still is, even though his work is kind of falling off. I just love his aesthetic, his style, his thematic, well, his themes. I don't know what I was gonna tag thematic to, but prolific filmmaker, man. He did 2 films at the time, both nominated for Best Picture. He ended up winning for Best Director for Traffic. I believe Julia Roberts won for Aaron Brockovich. And this is a studio film that's bygone, from a bygone era, because the indie movement was on the rise. All of the kind of indie wunderkinds, the prodigy filmmakers from the 90s, Spike Lee, Jim Jarmusch, Steven Soderbergh. There's many more. I can't think of any right now. Even Tarantino was part of that, right? But they all kind of grew into their own. And essentially, Traffic is a minimalist art house film masquerading as a big budget studio film, right? It's got big budget themes and actors, but the way it's executed, its form, is completely minimalist. And he, I believe Soderbergh called it his like $40 million Dogma film. Dogma 95 was like a set of rules that filmmakers, in like natural light, no real actors. So he already broke a couple rules there. I don't know if he used natural lighting, but I know what he's saying. He shot the film himself. I don't think he edited himself, but he's a DIY filmmaker, you know. So in that sense, I was trying to emulate him as a film student. I looked up to him and what he was all about. His just his personal values and his cinematic values just spoke to me. And Traffic is just a wonderful film. It's a relic. When hyperlink films were just on the rise, you know, Crash, you know, followed in its footsteps and won an Oscar. TV does that now. Well, TV's been doing that, right, with multiple storylines, A, B, and C plot. But the difference is these plot lines never kind of dovetail or meet up in the end. They're just, you know, separate ladders, separate steps on a ladder of the same topic, right? The drug war on multiple fronts, so to speak. Award-winning screenwriter Stephen Gaghan wrote it, and I love the style of the film as well, just the different visual the visual differences of each storyline, right? The San Diego storyline, the Tijuana storyline, and the Ohio storyline just look different, so you can know what story is which, and gives it a different, very different and distinctive mood, that's for sure. All right, so that's pretty much all I have to say about my top films of 2000. It was a wonderful time in cinema. A very different time, that's for sure. The superhero phenomenon didn't oversaturate the box office. You know, nowadays the only way you can get a film greenlit is if it's a superhero film, or if it's based on another property, or if it's a sequel, right? Very different time. I don't want to get into it too much, but I wanted to keep this short and simple, even though I went almost an hour here. Thank you guys for listening. Yeah, it'll always hold a special place in my heart, the 2000s. It's great to revisit these films as well. Great blast from the past. Great trip down memory lane. Hope you guys enjoyed listening. You can find past episodes at thelazerboy.wordpress.com. Find more podcasts on the YouTube channel at the Lazerboy, the Lazerboy with a Z. Find us on Instagram at the Lazerboy with a Z. And thank you guys for listening. We'll see you next time.